Today we will be multiplying and dividing rational expressions, and so we've got a mixture of problems. So I've put a mixture of problems on this tutorial as well. So first one here, always looked at the sign. It's a division sign. So the difference between division and multiplication is that you'll need to multiply by the reciprocal. So it's kind of like this. If you were dividing, let's say 4 divided by 2, you know that equals 2, right? Well, if I change this division to multiplication and change this 2 to its reciprocal, I end up with the same exact answer. See, 4 times by a half. Half of 4 is also 2. And so we're using that concept, that rule, of changing division to multiplication of the reciprocal to be able to simplify these expressions. So let's go ahead and try to do some of the problems that we'll end up seeing. Well, first one here, we've got a division problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the reciprocal of this. So I'm going to rewrite this as a multiplication problem. X to the 4th y over 3z to the 5th power multiplied by 9y squared z. And this is all over x to the 2nd, z to the 3rd. So that's the first step. Always change it to a multiplication problem, and then do as what we did on the last lesson, which was to use the commutative property, right? This is one fraction. Put the x's on top. And so let's start with the 9, since there's no addition signs here. I'm going to put that 9 first, put the coefficient first, and then count up the x's. Looks like you only have 4 x's on top. We got 1 y and 2 y's make 3 y's, and it looks like we've got 1 z on top of that fraction. And do the same thing here. Bring the coefficients together, put that 3 first. Look at the x's next. So I got x squared, and then I've got no y's, but I do have some z's. It looks like we've got 5 z's here and 3 z's. They're going to make 8 z's all together. And then we can go ahead and do some reducing. So start with the coefficients. 3 goes into 9 3 times. So I've got some x's that are left on top. So I'll take away 2 from the top, 2 from the bottom. So I've got x to the 2nd on the top. Y's aren't going to change, but the z here is going to cancel out one of the z's down below, leaving us with 7 z's on the bottom. So what we have left over is 3x squared y to the 3rd. That's on top. Down below we just have that z to the 7th power. That's our answer. Well, taking a look at our next one, it's another division problem. And so when you see a division problem like this, we're going to change it to multiplication. Again, this is what the fraction would actually look like, but I'm going to take its reciprocal. So I'm going to move this down below. So I've got this 8n squared minus 8. On top, I've got the 10n plus 10n squared on the bottom. But now I'm multiplying by the reciprocal. So 1's on top. I've got the 2n, not m, but n. So 2n to the 3rd power plus 6n squared minus 8n on the bottom. So we go ahead and now we write this as one fraction, but as we do it, we factor out the common factors, or we factor as two binomials, depending on the part of the problem. So there's 8 that goes into all these numbers, so put the 8 out here. And then what's left over is an n squared minus 1. Now that's a difference of squares. That will factor further. So we'll go ahead and do that. And when we see something like this, I'll factor that as an n minus 1 and an n plus 1. So I just stuck it up on top, and now I'll cross this off, because now I've factored it as these two binomials. Now that should be a 1, not a 2. So let's fix that real quick. And then from there, we can go ahead and take a look at the bottom of the fraction. Common factor of 10n. 10n is the common factor there, so I'll pull that out and put that on the outside of a parenthesis. Do the division, you've got a 1 plus n left over. Now that's the same thing as n plus 1, and those will cancel. But before we do that, let's take out a common factor here. So I see 2n goes into each of these terms. 2n. So we take out a 2n. And so put that on the outside of a parenthesis. Do the division, and I've got an n squared plus 3n minus 4, and that will end up factoring as well. So let's go ahead and factor that right down below here. And so I see that factors to an n plus 4 and an n minus 1. And so from that point, I can go ahead and cross this off since I've already factored it. It's the same thing as what I have right here. Now let's go ahead and do some reducing to see what's left over. So as I said before, we've got the 1 plus n will cancel out this n plus 1. This n minus 1 will cancel out this n minus 1. And then we also have a factor of 2 that goes into 10. So we'll take out that 10, change it to a 5. 8 changes to a 4. But I still have another 2 down below here. This 2 will cancel out and go into this 4 2 times. So let's see what's left over. So on top, all I've got left over is this 2. Down below, I've got 2 n's here, so n squared, and then the n plus 4. There's my answer. Now, you could see the answer like this, or you might end up seeing it multiplied out as 2 over n to the third power plus 4n squared. Either way is acceptable. Now let's move on to the next one. This one is not a division problem, so we don't have to worry about taking its reciprocal. So we'll go ahead and rewrite it as one fraction, and I'll factor as I go. 2m is on top. Now this is a difference of squares, so it's going to factor to an m minus 4 and an m plus 4. And then down below, I've got just a common factor of 5. 5 goes into each of these terms. Put the 5 on the outside, and then factor, I've got m plus 4 left over. So now we can go ahead and cancel out some common factors. The m plus 4s are going to cancel. So I'm left with a 2m times by m minus 4 all over 5. There's my answer. Now you could end up seeing that multiplied out. That would be a 2m squared minus 8m all over 5. And so those equal each other. Either way is fine to write down for me. Well, looking at the next one, another multiplication problem. So we can go ahead and rewrite it as one fraction. And always factor as we go. So we got p plus 3. That does not factor. But here, in this part of the fraction, we can take out a common factor of 3. So you go ahead and do that. Down below, we've got a p minus 5. And so now we've got a p squared minus 25. So that is going to factor as two binomials, p minus 5 and p plus 5. And then here we've got a trinomial that factors to a p plus 3 and a p minus 2. Numbers need to multiply to make negative 6, but subtract to make positive 1. So now we can go ahead and cancel out any common factors that we see. See, the p minus 5s will cancel, p plus 3s will cancel, but that's it. That's all I've got. So I've got a 3 left over on top. Down below I've got the p plus 5 times by a p minus 2. Now, could end up multiplying those numbers, and if we do multiply the denominator, we have to use FOIL. And so what's left over is p squared plus 3p. Now what how I got that is I went negative 2p for the outside terms. Inside were 5p. Those subtract to make 3. And then a minus 10. So either answer is fine. And so here we have to take the reciprocal of this fraction and change it to multiplication. So let's try this. I'm going to do that, change it to multiplication. I'm going to take the reciprocal. So I'm going to factor as I go and put the numbers where they need to be. So I see that 3c goes into each of these terms. So divide by 3c. 3c goes outside the parenthesis. Do the division. You got c plus 8. Now I'm going to factor this one. This one's going on top now. So I'll divide by 9. So 9 goes on the outside. Do the division. We got c minus 1. Okay, that went on top of the fraction. Now I see this denominator here is going to factor as two binomials, c minus 1 and c minus 1. They had to be the same sign because they multiply to make a positive 1, but they add to make negative 2c. Now this numerator went on the bottom, so that's why I'm writing it on the bottom of the fraction, because I changed it to multiplication. No common factors, but I see a trinomial that factors. So c plus 8 and c plus 1. So the numbers need to multiply to make 8 and add to make 9. So from that point, we can go ahead and take out some common factors. We see c plus 8s. Those are going to cancel. C minus 1s will cancel, but only one on the top and bottom. And that's it. That's as far as we can go. So we still have this 3c times by 9. So that makes 27c. And then down below, I've got the c minus 1 times by the c plus 1. And we could end up multiplying out those two binomials, and we'd end up with a c squared minus 1. The outside and inside terms would end up canceling. So either answer is fine. Well, one more problem. It's a multiplication problem, so no reciprocal needed. Just got to take out common factors. And so I look at this one, I see x goes into each of these terms. So I'm going to just take out 1x from this term and 1x from this term. So x goes on the outside, do the division. We got a 3x plus y to the third power. And taking a look at the numerator of this next fraction, I see y goes into each of these, but also a 2. So 2y is what I'm going to take out. So that goes outside the parentheses. Do the division. We've got an x plus 4 left over. Well, here we just have y to the third, so we just got to bring that down. And here we have a 4x. So 4x gets taken out, and so we put that on the outside, 4 times x. So those are being multiplied. And then big parenthesis here, and we go ahead and do the division. We've got a 1 plus x. And then we go ahead and look for common factors on the top and bottom of the fraction. And so when I look at that, I see this x here will cancel out this x, and this y will cancel out one of these y's. So I still have 2 y's left over. I have this 2 going into 4 2 times. But that's it. There's no other canceling. X plus 4 and x plus 1 are not the same, and this does not cancel either. So what I've got left is a 3x plus y to the third times by a x plus 4. Down below I've got a 2y squared because of this y squared right here, times by 1 plus x. And that would be it. Now you could end up multiplying it out, and if we do, this is what we'd get. 3x squared, this would be a 12x, and here we'd have a plus xy to the third plus 4y to the third. So that's just using FOIL. And then down below, at 2y squared times 1 is 2y squared, and I have a plus 2xy squared. So either answer is fine. Leave it in the factor form or multiply it back out. I would take either one on a test. So those are the types of problems you'll see on tonight's homework. Good luck.